So you're being told you need to be evaluated for transplant, but you're not exactly sure when the timing will be right. What is that exact moment when getting a transplant is your best and only option versus when is it too soon to even consider such? That's our discussion today on the Transplant Helper, so go ahead and stay tuned. Hey folks, welcome to the Transplant Helper. Today, my name is Jim Merle, and today's topic of discussion all has to do with timing and transplant. When do you know it's exactly that right moment when you ought to be listed for transplant? I understand the majority of you who are watching this program, certainly you have already been through the process, you've already had this consideration, you've already had this thought, this mindset, but I hope that you'll watch through to the end anyway so we can discuss this together, and maybe you can continue to be an advocate for someone out there maybe in the waiting rooms at your clinics that's facing the same question, help them to make this decision for themselves. Now, the biggest part of the transplant evaluation process, it really has to do with the testing. What do the numbers show? What do they see in the lab? What do they see in the testing areas? What are they really discovering about your body and its capacity and its potential right there in the moment? That's what matters as much as anything. However, on top of that, one of the biggest factors we need to consider personally, as well as the doctors try to help us to do so, is what is your actual quality of life right now in the moment. Before transplant, before going through any of the process, what is your quality of life like right now versus your potential quality of life if you receive that life-saving transplant? That's a huge question that has to be answered. Now, maybe that's why when you're sitting in the doctor's office during the transplant eval, a lot of times many of the questions they ask you are things like, Mr. Merle, can you brush your teeth by yourself? Can you shower? Can you get dressed? Can you drive? Can you climb a flight of stairs? Can you walk 50 feet? That sort of thing. What they're really trying to get you to do is to consider what your actual quality of life is in the moment. Because I can remember really without knowing it, needing a lot of help with that pre-transplant. That's because a lot of times when I go into the doctor's office and they'd ask me, Jim, how are you feeling? I just simply say, I don't feel good. I feel like trash. I don't feel like getting out of bed every morning. It's tough to do this or that. But when we actually started to ask those specific questions, can you do this? I found out actually I was doing a little bit more than I probably was considering. And I know that comes from being down in the dumps, depressed, whatever. I understand that, especially understand that now more than ever post-transplant. But a lot of times we need that help. We need those questions to be asked so that we can consider what our true quality of life is. Again, because once you get that transplant, you have to be assured, as well as the doctors are trying to assure you, that you're going to have a better quality of life on the other side. Things are going to be improved. Now, instead of, walking 50 feet, you might walk 500 or something like that. That's what you're trying to help you decide. So it's really a huge decision in trying to measure that quality of life. And oftentimes in doing so, one of the better measuring marks you may have for that is not what you think or see about yourself, but it's what others see in you, like your spouse. And that could be for the positive or the negative. For example, me, myself, going into the doctor's office, a lot of times when they'd ask those questions, I'd say, oh, sure, I can do this, I can do that. My wife was sitting on the other side, my potential caregiver and my advocate, like I've discussed here before, and she was saying, no, he can't. He sleeps 16, 18 hours a day. If he takes a shower, he's zonked, he's out. If he eats a meal, he feels worse, that sort of thing. And she was able to bring a real trueness and honesty to the discussion that maybe I mentally, emotionally wasn't ready to bring to that discussion at that time. So let me make these overall suggestions. Number one, really consider, if you have to, write down on paper your daily activities and try to discern for yourself, even before going into clinic, where am I now? And do I expect to improve on that? And then take their advice as well as the advice from those around you as to exactly where that falls and the potential of where that might be. That's a huge thing. Now, it will matter, the blood work, the testing, all those things, the CAS, the biopsies, all that stuff's going to matter, yes, but it sometimes will not matter as much as your quality of life measurement. Now, let me add in addition to that, that I know some of you are waiting on the list right now, and your doctors are not giving you, for lack of better terms, the credit you deserve. You know, they're looking at your numbers in a cath lab or whatever it is, looking at your blood work, and they're saying, well, Mr. Miss So-and-so, you're not quite there yet. You're not quite ready for this process. And that may be true as far as the numbers go, but always keep in mind what's going to matter in addition to that is your quality of life. You know, if the doctor says, well, your ejection fraction is not quite low as we need it to be, or we might want to see it before we transplant, and then you can honestly turn to them and say, look, no matter what that ejection fraction is, no matter what the heart function shows, I can't even get out of bed. And you can be honest about that and know it's a physical problem, not just an emotional problem, which I have sometimes. If you can be honest about that, that might be the game changer. That might be the moment when the doctors say, you know what, if you're really feeling this way and not able to do any of these things, it might be the moment to make a move, because they're really just kind of rolling the dice here, if you will, to try to make a decision for you what is best and what time frame that needs to take place. I hope this has helped you out in some way. If it has, how about go ahead and give me a thumbs up, like this program. Consider subscribing if the subscribe button beneath this video, and then certainly comment below. I'd love to hear your story. How were you feeling when you were listed for transplant? How did you feel when you were finally transplanted? And maybe even how do you feel now? You don't have to put all of that in there, but just comment below and help to grow this transplant community. And as always, I thank you so much for joining me today. And until next time, stay stronger, friends.